Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Scott Luton and Kevin L. Jackson with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Kevin, how you doing today?
Hey, it's doing great today, except a little nip in the air. I tell you, this winter is coming fast.
Well, hey, here stateside, I welcome it. It's 55 degrees here in the Metro Atlanta area, and it's brisk, almost as brisk, Kevin, as today's conversation is going to be. We got a lot of good stuff to get to,
Looking
huh?
forward. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, down around 30, 35 here, but
Okay.
I'm still
Usually you're
still
flying higher than I am, Kevin, but hey, 35 sounds good too. But Kevin, today I'm looking forward to continuing our new limited run feature series here. We've been partnering with our friends at Noodle.ai on this project, a podcast series entitled Making Better Supply Chain Bets with the Power of Probabilities. Now, we've had some great feedback from our global audience in these conversations thus far. That's always a great thing. And, we've spent a ton of time in the first couple of episodes diving deep into artificial intelligence, and with good reason. But today we're going to be incorporating a lot more supply chain into our technology discussion. And we've got a couple of business leaders, Kevin, that are going to bring it today. So hang on to your hats and get ready for an outstanding conversation. Kevin, you ready to go?
Oh, I'm absolutely ready to go. But I know AI is really important and it's all the rage. But AI starts with real human intelligence, and that's what I really like about how Noodle puts all this together.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you. What a great t-shirtism on the front end of today's episode, Kevin, as always. So with that
To get
said,
AI, you need human AI.
with that said, I want to introduce our featured guest here today because Kevin's ready to go. He's already bringing the heat. So today we feature two guests that bring tons of experience in a variety of areas, especially supply chain and technology. In fact, they spent about 10 years working together at a previous organization, developing a close and powerful working relationship while moving mountains in global supply chain. They both have been proponents for years in terms of the potential for artificial intelligence to truly power transformational change in supply chain management and especially supply chain planning. So they were all about AI long before AI was cool. And now they're doing just that, working together again at Noodle.ai. So I want to welcome in Tim Krug, Chief Revenue Officer with Noodle.ai. Tim, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you,
Great.
Scott. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. And you brought the other half of your dynamic duo, Trevor Miles, thought leader, also at Noodle.ai. Trevor, how you doing?
Very good, thank you, Scott.
Well,
It's
great.
just a sidebar. It's 72 degrees here.
Oh,
Oh no!
All right, so we gotta go around. So 72. So it's the warmest maybe in Portugal where Trevor is. All right, Tim, give us the temp check.
52.
All
52
right.
degrees. Yeah.
All right, so Trevor, you get the balmy, nice tropical weather at least this time of year. So I bet it's pretty there in Portugal. But great to have y'all here. I really, from doing our homework, the passion y'all both bring in terms of doing business different. We're going to get into a lot of that and what that means in real practical terms, especially in supply chain. So listeners, stay tuned for that. But on the front end, Kevin, I want to give our
Yes.
listeners an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Trevor and Tim. And Tim, I'm going to start with you because while you reside in the Nashville area, you're a big Chicago Cubs fan, of course, Major League Baseball team. So what's been one of your favorite experiences either at a Cubs game or as a Cubs fan?
Sure. There's a lot of great Cubs memories. And we just relocated down here to Nashville just over 2 years ago. So grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago. And by far my favorite memory of being at a Cubs game was I was actually at Game 7 of the World Series in
Oh wow!
2016. I was also at Game 6 of the World Series, so both in Cleveland. when hell froze over and the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. 2016, my wife declared going into 2016 that it was going to be the year of the Krugs, and we
What
found
an
out
experience.
that we were pregnant with twins that year, and the Cubs won the World Series. So if any listeners are wondering, you can just declare in a couple months that it's going to be the year of you or your
Mm.
family. And based on my experience with my wife, it works out. So
Well, you speak it into the universe and it comes to fruition, Tim. That's what you're saying, right?
exactly,
It's all,
manifest it into reality.
Uh,
Uh,
Yeah.
it's all about positive thoughts, man.
Yeah.
exactly.
so,
And I did not, just to go back to the Cubs, as a Cubs fan, a true Cubs fan, I had the tickets to Game 6 and Game 7. And for those that don't remember, we were down 3 games to 1 in the World Series. So when Game 5 rolled around in Chicago, I was talking to my wife and saying, I just hope they lose at this point. I don't want to fly to Cleveland and watch them lose the World Series.
Didn't lose there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just being that this was the opposite of my wife's manifesting things into reality. But she's like, no, have confidence. This is the year of the Krugs. Cubs are going to pull it out, and Game 6 and Game 7, and yeah, what a great memory, and having the opportunity to be there in person. Hopefully, we're
love it.
not waiting another 100 years to get another World.
I love it. That brings two thoughts to mind, Tim. First off, Kevin, before you claim it, I'm going to call 2024 the year of the Lutons. I'm gonna go ahead and claim that, Kevin, before you can. And,
Wow. You
and second,
fast, man. You're really
we
fast.
try. Not most of the time, but and then secondly, really quick, Tim, I want to say Jason Hayward, former Atlanta Brave, hometown player, had a great leadership role in that 2016 Cubs team that went on and changed history. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing and congrats on that big year, and I'm sure plenty since. Kevin, I'm going to get you to comment. Let's switch over to Trevor, and then I'm going to get Kevin's commentary on this incredible panel we've got here. So, Trevor, welcome to the show. Congrats on
Thank you.
joining Noodle AI a few months back after doing so many big things in the industry. And before we get into our discussion today, I want to ask you on your LinkedIn profile, you've got this great quote and this great picture of Frank Zappa. Now, my
Yeah.
question is, are you a big fan of the quote? Are you a big fan of Frank Zappa or both?
Well, it is both, actually. At one stage, I can say that I had about 6 of these albums, but no one has albums anymore. My wife sold those without me knowing.
All the
Uh,
vinyl gone?
all the
No.
vinyl is gone, and my wife then admitted that she had sold it for about 150 Canadian dollars, and it was about 100 feet of vinyl. But
Wow.
it was quite amazing. So, but no, the more serious point is the quote. I've always liked Zapp as a maverick. He's always challenging. He has or was, and all of this, challenging capabilities and ideas and all of that. But his quote is the most important thing. Mind is like a parachute; doesn't work if it's not open.
Mm.
So I think that's a wonderful one, right?
Oh,
Wow.
Trevor,
That's
absolutely.
great.
And
Mm.
well, Kevin, I'm gonna get you to comment on that because I think that is probably one of those universal quotes and points of view that's always relevant. But gosh, having an open mind here in recent years, it may be more relevant than ever before. Kevin, speak on
Well,
that,
see,
or speak about this
yeah.
collection of panelists we've got here.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, when you have an open mind, you can also imagine the future.
Mm.
And I think it's really important in the conversation we're going to have because when you're thinking about the future, when you're thinking about what's going to happen in the future, when you're thinking about making better bets on
Mm.
what the future will bring, it really takes an open mind. It also takes a belief in your own capability and to leverage, what's happened in the past to improve your
Mm.
vision of the future. And I think
Yeah.
that's really what we're doing here with this, probabilistic approach
Mm.
by leveraging artificial intelligence and putting that together with what really happened in the past to have a much better view, to be a Nostradamus of what's coming
Mhm.
in your own business. That's
Mhm.
what I think it's really important, and that's the importance of having an open mind and a
Mhm.
clear view. That's what I really
Yeah.
like about this panel.
Kevin just raised the dramatic element into play here with Nostradamus. Trevor, one quick follow up question to that, and Kevin, well said. So obviously you're a music lover. You want to share any recent? So I hate to hear about your vinyl album collection, but have you bought a recent album that you're a big fan of? What are you tracking right now when it comes to music?
Well, I'm getting into a lot of the Latin stuff on Spotify. So big playlists on Spotify. My daughter's a huge. Oh, now I'm going to forget her. Who's the young woman from Nashville?
Oh, Taylor Swift.
She's a huge Swiftie, and she actually went to Seattle, where my son and daughter-in-law live, and went to one of the concerts with them in Seattle.
Mhm.
So we get inundated with Swiftie music, and I have to say that some of it's grown on me, which I wouldn't have said was possible 5 years ago. But
Oh
I do
wow.
find she's an interesting young woman and quite a strong character.
And
So,
talented, Trevor. I
So
mm,
that
echo
must
what you
mean,
said. What's
yeah.
that,
yeah,
Kevin?
that really must mean you have an open mind if you're doing that. Actually, I heard the other day on NBC News that
Mm,
Brian West is now covering the quote Taylor Swift beat as his
Really?
job. Can
yeah,
you imagine that? To be you're a newscaster and that's all you get to do is cover
yeah,
Taylor Swift.
that's right.
Hey, it's her world. We just live in it, right?
Yeah.
That's where we are. And but I'll tell you, incredibly talented musician, and of course, my
Mm,
daughters, much like yours, Trevor, huge,
mm,
huge fans. My family, huge, huge fans.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so now we are going to really cover all of our bases today because Taylor Swift
mm,
made an appearance in this technology and supply chain leadership conversation we're having. But great to
This
meet.
show is going to be top of the charts,
That's
Yeah.
guaranteed.
right. Tim, great to meet you and Trevor and get to know y'all a little bit better here on the front end. So we're going to shift gears though. We got a lot to get to here today. So, Kevin, as I segue here, have you ever gambled in the casino? You don't have to tell me good or bad, but what's your game?
I actually have gone to a casino quite a bit. My son lives in Vegas, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I
so,
forgot that for a
and
second.
uh, and in fact, one of the biggest wins though weren't in Vegas. I was in New Orleans at the Harris in New Orleans with my wife, and we were waiting. We were doing a show. I was doing a show there, and then we walked into the casino, Harris Casino, and we just walked to the first slot machine, put $1 in, and 800 came out,
wow.
and
And
it
did
was
you
like,
stop?
we did. She said, "Take it, stop. We're not doing anything else." And got the cash and had some dinner, and we had to recreate. I forget what movie it was, but we went to our hotel room. She sat on the bed and I just threw the cash on top of her 10 fingers.
Hey, you're one of the few that stopped while you were ahead,
Yes.
Kevin. That is such a great story. And not to be too dramatic, but we have a great opportunity by leaning into uh, cutting edge technology to not only stop while you're ahead, but continue getting more and more ahead. And that's what we're going to be talking
Oh
about here today. So, Kevin,
yes.
the main topic, really looking at supply chain management through a gambler's eyes and perspective. And a big part of the game is truly making better bets. So, we're going to be talking about how embracing and understanding uncertainty is critical to placing better bets and making better decisions, such as in Kevin's story, stopping while you're ahead and
Mm,
using those winnings for fun things. So I want to build a foundation first, Tim, Trevor, and Kevin. So I bet we've got just like Kevin. I've tried my hand very poorly in Vegas and other places. I really enjoy that. And I bet we've got some gamblers in our audience and plenty that have never gambled. I bet that are listening. So to level set, Tim, what can supply chain leaders learn from high stakes gamblers? You think?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just going back to the Kevin story and just thinking about Vegas, even people that haven't been to Vegas, is people all have a vision of what the casinos look like and all these marble floors and the oxygen being pumped into the room and these huge buffets. And, they
Food.
don't have all this, this beauty that they have from giving money away, right? Like they're making money. And I think a lot of supply chain executives today, and just looking at even what's happened over the last couple of years with COVID, I think a lot of people feel like the deck is stacked against them. Just like people walking into the casino and seeing that obviously the house is winning. The deck is stacked against you as a supply chain leader or chief supply chain officer, because there's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of variability that exists in the real world and how you make decisions. And so, at Noodle, we think that everyday supply chain decisions are the equivalent to placing a bet, because you're risking money on the uncertain outcome of a future event. And that's really the definition of betting, right? And so our view, and kind of in the title of this podcast, is that there is a way, just like high stakes gamblers, there are people that win more frequently than they lose. The house isn't always beating them, and their secret sauce is using the power of probability to their advantage to be able to make decisions. And if you make decisions when you're consistently most likely to win over time, if that's your strategy, if you're betting when you have an 80% chance of winning, then over time you're going to win a lot of money. And so that's really what we're trying to help people do, is take the power of probabilities and apply it to their decision-making process so that they can make better decisions and get better outcomes.
Well said. Making better decisions faster, that the team and leadership is more confident in. I really appreciate what you shared there. Trevor, what would you add in terms of what supply chain leaders can learn from gambling, high stakes gamblers?
Well, Scott, I think they first need to learn and understand that the tools they have been using for a long time do not offer them this opportunity of understanding what the probabilities are. So the best way I can describe what they do right now is, imagine you have to take a trip with Google, and you use Google Maps, and it comes up with a distance. You live in the Atlanta metro area. You know that the traffic can get very clogged up at times, etc. So if Google tells you you've got an hour and 13 minutes to go to where your destination, when are you going to leave?
About 5 hours early.
Exactly. So because there's uncertainty in that number, but Google only gives you one number. So you don't know how much to buffer that time, because Google doesn't say it's going to be somewhere between an hour and hour 30, in which case, if it was a really important meeting, you'd leave an hour and 30 before. But if it was to go and see friends, you'd leave an hour before. But because Google doesn't tell you what that range is, you have no way of making the decision, so you leave 5 hours early. And that's the fundamental thing that's wrong right now. And what Tim is talking about is we lift those probabilities. We make those probabilities available to the people so they can understand how to place their bets. Because if there's only a 10% chance of making it, why place the bet? If there's an 80% chance of making it, place the bet.
Yes.
But the existing tools don't tell them that information, so they have no idea.
Trevor, I love that example. And Kevin, I'm going to get you to comment. I love that example because having navigated Atlanta traffic for 20 years now.
Oh, you haven't been in DC traffic.
Well, I've heard bad things there and experienced that a little bit, Kevin. But, kidding aside, that difference between hour and 13 minutes, I think, is the first figure that Trevor used, in 5 hours. That 3 hours and 47 minutes for math is right. It's such a huge opportunity. and let's use it as an opportunity rather
Mm.
than just waste it. It's kind of one of the bigger points Trevor's making. Kevin, what would you add in terms of what Tim and Trevor has shared here?
Well, when you think about this, like when you're looking at like a broker, for instance, they always say
Mm.
past performance is no guarantee of the future. When
Mm.
I tell you something, you can't believe it. But
Mm.
this is different, it seems, right? We're not trying to guarantee the future. We're just trying to give you some
Yes,
idea of the risk of the future so
Mm.
that you can make smart decisions. So if you're trying to get to an interview, you make sure you leave 5 hours early. But if it's just to go, with your friends, or you're doing something that doesn't really have a start or finish time, you can just, take the risk because it doesn't really matter. I think being being smart is about having knowledge of the
correct.
source of information,
Mm.
and sort of the boundaries. What could happen in the good side, and also what could happen on the bad side, so that you can make the decision.
Hey, Kevin, I love that, and I love how you very casually kind of mentioned scenarios, different scenario planning opportunities. Right, that's great. So Trevor, I'm gonna come back with you. I'm gonna keep here with you. How do deterministic? I can never say that word. How do deterministic planning models constrain supply chain executives, Trevor?
So they give hopelessly optimistic estimates of what the supply chain can actually do. Um, Now, some of them go, as we were talking about, essentially making buffers. You were talking about buffering the time it takes
Yeah.
you to travel. And Kevin was talking about risk profile and all of that. But basically, what you're trying to do is decide how you're going to make sure that you get to the end point. And this is where people then place the wrong inventory at the wrong place in the wrong quantity because they had no idea what the variability was. They only had one number that the solution gave them. So they're making bad bets the whole time because they have no idea what the probabilities are of winning it.
Mm.
So as a consequence, they always are playing from behind the eight ball, to mix metaphors, but they're always in this position where they don't know how uncertain it is. And, quite honestly, on the other side of Kevin's statement, it's not only risk, but where's the opportunity?
Mm.
This thing we wanted to do might have only 10%, but there's this other egg that's just off site, but it's got an 80% probability, but it looks good. So let's go for it.
Mhm.
Yes,
But they don't have that information at their fingertips, so they can't make those decisions.
Trevor, excellent point. And we're putting self constraints on the performance of an organization by doing that. Trevor, very self limiting. Tim, what would you add in terms of these deterministic, more traditional planning models?
I just go back to what I alluded to in the beginning is that we find from our conversations with chief supply chain officers that there's just so much frustration that exists that people feel like they're making these decisions and they're losing. They're making bets and they're losing. And there's a lot of frustration. I think people recognize that the technology that they're using that has these deterministic approaches is 30 years old. Like the fundamental approach to supply chain planning and the math that's being used and how decisions are made is from 3 decades ago. Like we're living in the 90s, right? Before
That's sort
Taylor
of
Swift
like,
was even born,
Born.
probably, right?
yeah,
Uh,
that's sort of like trying to drive through Atlanta or DC with one of those paper maps, right? You know
yeah,
how it is, and
Yeah.
it doesn't change, right? You
right.
don't you don't have Google to tell you, when you go in that direction, there's a accident,
Mm.
75% of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's almost like a feeling of, I don't know, frustration, sometimes
Mm,
hopelessness that it's like people know inherently that there's got to be a better way. than
Yeah.
how they're making decisions right now. But they don't have the information is being withheld from them, right? Like even just some of the topics on risk or opportunity.
Yeah.
Like I, as an executive, I'm making decisions based off of emotion a lot of time. I don't have I don't know that this decision I'm about to make has a 10% likelihood of winning or an 80% chance of winning. I still I want to have that information at my disposal and be able to evaluate my decisions not just based off of the outcome of them, but
Hmm.
the information that I use to make the decision. Did I make a good decision with the information at hand? And I can live with losses if I knew the information when I was making the decision versus just losing and not having a knowledge of what the risk or opportunity was when I made the decision.
Excellent point, Tim. And when we gain confidence in the right decisions, a team can really garner more and more organizational confidence. And goodness gracious, you can really move mountains when you've got a confident team with more information. They're making better and faster decisions that they're confident in. Kevin, your quick comment before I move on to our next topic.
Well, the more information you can get, the more coloring of that information, the better decisions you can make, and it also improves the leadership and collaboration across the team. And in today's world, it's really all about how your whole business ecosystem works together as a team. So I think that's really key is that collaboration and leveraging information to improve collaboration.
Yeah.
Great point, Kevin. And because modern day supply chain ecosystems, your suppliers, the manufacturers, your customers, you name it,
Right.
everybody is part of the ecosystem, and that's kind of how we're viewing successful decisions through that prism rather than just one node or one segment.
Right.
All right,
That misnomer. It's not a supply chain, right? It's a supply network.
right.
Work. Yes.
Or web, as I've heard. My
Web.
son's a big
Yeah.
Spider-Man fan, so we've had a lot of fun with supply webs. All right. So I feel like we could have like a 6 hour, really fun. Someone to get the adult beverages. We're going to have a long chat. Tim and Trevor, I think Kevin and I are
I'm
feeling a
good
lot of
with that.
kindred spirits here. But for the
It's
sake of
5 o'clock
time,
somewhere in the world. Let's make it happen.
that's right. So as I
Portugal.
mentioned,
Yeah.
It's nearly
as I
that, yes.
Yes.
see, you know we're having a lot of fun when I can't
Yeah.
quite get the next point out. But as I referenced Kevin, Tim, and Trevor on the front end in the first couple episodes of this series, we enjoyed really intriguing and thought-provoking discussions on artificial intelligence. So I want to just level set with both of y'all, and Tim, I'll circle back to you. Why is AI pivotal to reshaping the supply chain landscape and truly, powerfully, practically changing the status quo?
When I think about just building off of the last thing that we were talking about, the legacy technology, the current technology that people are using was based off of the computational power and the cost of compute and memory, 30 years ago, right? And that is what people are using to make decisions in their businesses in the supply chain space. And then um, in their personal life, they have access to ChatGPT, right? Where
Mm.
it is the culmination of computing power, innovation, transformation, the reduction in cost uh, on memory and storage and things of that nature. It's those things that have made the power of probabilities usable in supply chain, right?
Hmm.
And that if you're living in a world where you're constrained on compute and you have to like limit yourselves to lead time is always going to be 4 days for something, that's the framework that people are still operating in. but we know that AI, practical applications of AI exist in our personal lives. And why can't we apply those same principles to supply chain decision making? And one of the things that I think is so fascinating about this concept of probabilities is that we're all, I think most people listening are probably familiar with ChatGPT and have tested it for themselves. Fundamentally, what it's doing is using probabilities. It's predicting what the next word should be used based off of the text that has already been constructed, right? It is a probabilistic system. It is generative AI, and those techniques, right? They aren't just applicable to large language models and text. They're applicable to the supply chain, and we're convinced that it is going to totally transform the way that supply chain leaders and businesses are run.
Mm.
Can can I pull a little bit on that
Sure,
statement
please
though?
go.
Because one of the, I guess, growing skill sets in this world and is of Chat GPT and AI is called prompt engineering.
Mm,
That where you have to figure out what prompts to put into Chat GPT so that you could get relevant answers to your problem.
mm,
So, in a way, it seems to me that we're kind of going backwards. It's all about asking the right question
mm,
as opposed to having all this technology in front of you. So you need to have an understanding of your needs and your business process sensitivities so that you can ask the right question. And without asking the right question, the answer really can be gibberish. Is
Right.
that true? How this seems to be like more important or a critical part of this is knowing the business
Well,
so
mm.
that you can ask the right questions. Is that
so
true?
yeah, so Trevor, why don't you, if you speak to that, and then also
Yes.
continue on about the power of how AI, how pivotal it is to reshaping how supply chain works.
Yes, I want to start with Kevin's classification of this is going backwards. I
Mhm.
think it's going forwards because it requires the people to actually understand the business context as opposed to
Yes.
merely a number context. So I think it's going forward. They need to understand what questions to ask. But quite honestly, I'm going to go way back into history. The first computer I touched was at university, and I can still only type with these 6 fingers. I cannot type
Sounds
with
like
all of
me.
my fingers. Okay. So, in all seriousness, I'd love to have a UI in which I could ask questions and get results that are presented to me without having first specified this to a design engineer who then has to go and put together some description of and bring it back to me and say, is this good enough? And, go backwards and forwards in that way. But for me to be able to ask a contextually relevant question to the system and get an answer back in a manner
Mhm.
in which I can consume it, I think is wonderful. It's a big step forward. But let's go back really to where Tim was starting from. So the first point is to make is that emphasize that generative AI is probabilistic. So even within the context of supply chain, it is still probabilistic. Okay. So the contrast here is deterministic versus probabilistic. So generative AI won't tell you what the answer is, but it'll tell you the most likely answer.
Mhm.
So it's telling you what the probability is that you're going to win. And then you can make that decision on, okay, how do I want to scale those probabilities? As you were saying earlier, Scott, or I can't remember, it might have been Kevin. If I'm going for dinner with friends, then hey, I can have a low cost of failure. But if I'm going
Yeah.
for an interview, I have a high cost of failure. So, but if you've got those probabilities, you can do that. But I still think that while that's really valuable, the most valuable part of this generative AI is that it is auto-tuning and auto-learning. So let me describe how deterministic solutions are put into place right now. Somebody makes a decision, you get an army of consultants who come in, who start turning the dials of the configuration parameters. There's lots of exercise. 18 months is nothing for a deployment.
Hmm.
And now you have your solution that's running. But what happens when the business changes? How often do people go back to those principal dials that they set and question whether those dials are still the right ones? Well, what happens in generative AI is that it's learning. It said, hey, I told Tim to go an hour and 15 minutes before, but he was late. So I need to adjust that to probably an hour and 25 to give him enough. So it's learning from what it's telling the company to do and the results that are generated from that, which is a big difference from existing solutions. So I think the combination of that probabilistic, which allows you to then set your risk profile, and the regenerative, as we call it, because you're learning, you're updating. I think these are just breakthroughs that people have not experienced in the past.
Excellent point, Trevor. I'm going to keep driving a little bit, and then I'm going to circle back,
Mhm.
Kevin, and get your commentary after Tim and
Hmm.
Trevor address this next one, because all these conversations evolve a good bit, and I think we really hit on probabilistic planning, easy for them to say, a lot here. So, Tim, I'll circle back to you. If you may want to put a little more definition on that term, but we've already kind of implied and spoken to Noodle.ai's approach. So, if you could put a little color on how y'all define probabilistic planning and how Noodle.ai's approach is different than some of the traditional decision making and planning methodologies that we've been speaking to on the first half of the conversation. Tim?
Yeah, so we're currently thinking about this in typically a two-step process because um, it's no secret that people spend years, and Trevor was alluding to this, and tens of millions of dollars deploying an advanced planning system. And if you look at the market cap of like the big competitors to SAP, for example, like Trevor and I's previous employer, over the course of COVID, it has just highlighted the fact that people needed to change. They were looking for a new approach, and so they've invested in advanced planning systems. And so
Hmm.
the first step that we think is that we provide a system on top. We complement the current technology investments that they've already made, and we do what we call intelligent correction. So we take the planning results out of their advanced planning system. We take what actually is being executed out of the execution system, and we compute probability, which those systems don't understand. And then we do a series of steps to try to do this intelligent correction of the plan. So we do a demand prediction, we do a supply prediction, we calculate what the value at risk is, the expected value at risk associated with that. And then we generate these corrective actions using the concepts that Trevor was saying, reinforcement learning, graph neural networks, and we send those messages back to the planning system or an execution system. So and by doing that, taking that approach where we're complementing the current system. One of the things that we think will be helpful to the market is you'll always have a view of what was my plan telling me in my current planning system, and then what was the AI, what was Noodle suggesting I should change based off of probabilities. And those things will then be binary. It's either I, as the human, or the company, took the AI recommendations, or I didn't. And there's going to be a financial ledger on a weekly basis. Did I take the action or not? And what was the financial consequence? So in this way, we think that this will give people the confidence in AI, is that I will be able to see the financial value of the recommendations that the AI is giving me. Did I get a financial benefit or not? And I think that first step is chief supply chain officers or CFOs have a real hard time answering the question of what is the financial value of my advanced planning system, or even what is the benefit of deploying SAP and doing a S4 HANA upgrade. Right? Like, what's the business case associated with that? I have to do it. Whereas being able to see this ledger saying, hey, this was what the AI did for me last week. So that's the first step. And then the second step, and where we're going, is instead of just doing intelligent correction of planning systems that are creating plans that aren't feasible to begin with and using probabilities to correct them, just transition to a planning system that is probabilistic by nature, that is using generative AI. And so we endeavor to make this a reality in the next 18 to 24 months, is be able to give people a what we call regenerative planning system that's capable of replacing their current technology and do end-to-end planning that's based off of generative AI.
Tim, that's exciting. I wish I had my shades, because it sounds like not only the current state, but the future is bright. Kevin, I knew you were trying to get in a quick comment there. Before I go to Trevor, Kevin, what were you going to share based on what Tim shared?
Well, I kind of like Tim's discussion as you can check the ledger, right? It's sort of like you can go to tape, but it actually brings to the forefront the cost of decision and non-decision.
Oh yes.
Because you can say, okay, I wanted to do this, Noodle AI told me to do that, and I didn't do either one. Okay. And the ledger will tell you, well, because you didn't make a decision, it cost you this much money, right? Or you made this decision, it made you this, you made that decision, it made you less. So it seems like Noodle is bringing the holy grail, right? Trying to give you the bottom line on not just decisions you make, but non-decisions that you may make.
A little Indiana Jones reference there. And Trevor, I'm coming to you because I want to get you to speak more on what Tim was sharing and the true difference and competitive advantage of what Noodle AI is doing. But before, I love, Tim, one of the themes you're talking about there that we love talking about around here is the power of the and versus the tyranny of the or. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but I heard a lot of that in what Tim's response. So Trevor, talk about why this is different.
Well, there are several ways in which that can be addressed, and we need to start even at Kevin's statement much, much earlier that prompt engineering is coming in, okay? Because it's going to necessitate the people actually use these tools differently. But let me be very careful. I've said for a long time that AI isn't going to take the people out of the process. AI is going to take the robot out of the people. Okay.
Yes, I love that.
I do too.
So
I'm gonna steal that, Trevor.
They're going to be doing different things, but some might need to be upskilled and all of this type of thing. But principally, what AI is going to give them is this ability to ask a lot of questions and get an end-to-end answer, and with a probability that they're going to be able to arrive at that result. Okay, so if they're looking at 3 different options of doing things, one might look very, very nice from a financial perspective. There's a low probability of achieving it. There's something else that's less fantastic from a financial perspective, but there's a high probability of achieving it. Well, which one are you going to go for? In my opinion, you should go for the one that has the highest probability. Or The other side, which Noodle will be able to do as well, is tell you what's hindering you. The high
Mm.
value one with low probability, but what's causing you to have low probability? So you can go and make a change to your supply chain in order to improve your probabilities. But if you didn't know what was causing you that low probability, you wouldn't even be able to fix it. Okay. So these things are going to change the way in which people use systems quite dramatically, because what I've talked about there is, first of all, the way in which people interact with the system. It will be, I believe, much more of a prompt type of environment. But the other one is it's not just what is my result, because I can't then calculate what other answers I could get. It's, well, what's causing me to get a bad result and how quickly can I fix it?
Mm.
So that's going to be a big, big change in how we do things.
Trevor, I love it.
Wow.
Kevin, I'm gonna get you to comment really quick, but I want to make a quick. What I'm hearing, kind of
Mm,
quantification is another theme
Mhm.
here. What Tim
mm,
and Kevin and Trevor are all sharing, but all things are not equal. The cost of not knowing, what I'm
mm.
thinking after hearing all this, is skyrocketing now based on the art of the possible and the opportunities are out there. So, Trevor and Tim, this is exciting. Kevin, your quick comment. I know that you love that Trevor's quote about it's not going to take the people. I'm paraphrasing, not take the people out, but it takes a robot out of the people. Love
Yeah,
that, Trevor.
yeah.
Kevin?
Take the robot out of the people, and it emphasizes what I've been sort of thinking is that this makes people even more important because it's
Mhm.
the people that better understand the context of the decision. It's the people that better
Yes.
understand the intangibles
Mm, mm.
that you can't put into a system, and it's
Correct.
the context and the intangibles that the people bring. That's, once again, you're taking the robot out, you're taking out the
Mm.
things that, anything can do, any software can do. You're
Yes.
really highlighting what the real software up there in the head
Yes.
can do.
Yes.
Very
Exactly.
poetic.
Yeah, I think
Kevin.
that's one of the things. If you follow like Laura Sassiri and
Hmm.
there's other analysts that talk about this, is if you look over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, the talent gap in supply chain and planning specifically, and a lot of the frustration that new entries into the profession feel because they have this life experience of using like their iPhone and
Yeah,
all this great technology, and then they find themselves like working in spreadsheets and doing all this gymnastics, like moving data around,
Mm,
and that's the robot that Trevor's
yeah,
talking about that
mm.
we're trying to take out of the people. And I think that that is going to give people way more job satisfaction because they're going to be able to make decisions with a better understanding of the value that they're driving, for the business, right? Instead of just like sitting in the silo and moving numbers around each day and having no idea, the value that's
staring
being.
at the spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not very fulfilling.
Right.
All right,
No.
so Tim, let's stick with you for a second because I want to get you to kind of speak to the so what here, right? So if we have listeners out there that haven't bought into anything we've shared yet, I know you've got your finger on the pulse because you're working with organizations that have really seen some real tangible benefits by leveraging probabilistic planning, of course, things you are doing at Noodle AI. So give us some of those examples if you would, Tim.
Yeah, the easiest way I think about this, the reason to do anything in business is to make money or save money, right? And so, on the making money standpoint, um, by having this type of information available to us, getting the right inventory to the right location at the right time, that is providing service. That's hitting your OTIF metric, on time in full.
Hmm.
That's making sure that you have the right things at the right place so you can capture the revenue opportunity. And during the COVID times, this is what most people were focused on because people were operating in a supply constrained environment, particularly in consumer packaged goods. Right, everybody was stocking their pantries with stuff, and it's a lot of companies that we were engaged with at that time, and now, they were just making everything that they could because the perception
Yeah.
was that people were going to buy it. Let's keep the factory rolling and get things out there. And the worst case scenario is I'm not going to be able to capture revenue, right? And so by using these techniques and using the power of probabilities, at that time we were helping people capture revenue opportunity, deliver on their service expectations, avoid being fined from their partners for not meeting the service expectations. What we're seeing now is as people have come out of this and now we're operating in more of a demand constrained environment, it's all about cash, right?
Mhm.
And trying to make better decisions to improve working capital. And so in today's world, that's the impact that we're seeing is if I can improve my forecast accuracy, for example, by using some of the AI techniques even on the demand side, and I can get 10, 15, 20% more accuracy on forecasts, that means that I'm not going to have inventory that I need to stock at a location that's going to potentially be excess or obsolete. I'm not going to have to carry that inventory and pay inventory carrying costs. So it's very common when we look at the financial ledger that I was talking about and being able to
Mhm.
see the financial impact that the AI is having on business decisions, for us to be able to show gross margin impact in tens of millions of dollars over the course of monthly increments, right? We have a few customers who, when they look at their financial ledger, they're seeing over $250 million of benefit over the course of the last year in terms of the AI recommendations that they've accepted and what that's meant to their business.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. That's the year of Noodle AI is what I'm hearing there, Tim. Goodness.
Mhm.
All right. So Kevin, I'm gonna get you a quick comment here. I know Tim earlier we were kind of all picking on the '90s a bit, but one of the things I heard Tim talk about, I'm gonna take it back to the '80s, good old video game pitfall. One of the tangible benefits here is being able to avoid some of those horrible decisions that will lead to a financial pitfall in many ways. Kevin, what'd you hear there though?
Well, here you can avoid not only the pitfalls, but avoid the mistakes of others and maybe even the mistakes that you've made before because you can see it, it's like in your face. You're going to be stupid again.
Yeah.
Kevin's keeping it real. I love that. And that's a great segue, Kevin, because as I bring Trevor back into the conversation, as always, you're going to get the frank, honest assessment here at Supply Chain Now. So, Trevor, tell us what's the real cost you think for organizations and their leaders that cling, again, that word, cling to traditional deterministic models?
The biggest cost is the slowness to react to changing business environments. Okay, because uh, there's a company I used to work with, which I love, which was using a solution which we both loved. But what happened is they've got a long supply chain that starts in China and Japan, and actually in this case, and ended in South America. Went through 4 different ERP systems, all of this type of stuff. The problem was they were a fairly small semiconductor purchaser, but they were putting more and more semiconductors into their finished equipment. But because they were a small buyer, they didn't get forward visibility of what the semiconductor availability was. And they were just lifting the lead times out of the ERP system. And the ERP system didn't notice that the semiconductor supplies were taking longer and longer to arrive. So those standard lead times go into the planning system. The planning system doesn't know that the lead times are getting longer and longer.
Yeah.
So it just keeps on planning for those shorter lead times. And they get to 18 months later, which is the length of their supply chain. And all of a sudden, they don't have enough stuff to send to their customer because they couldn't buy the semiconductors 18 months ago. So now if you bring in an AI system that's learning the whole time, monitoring, it can see automatically that, hey, the semiconductor lead time is increasing. So let's go in and make sure we buy earlier and earlier and earlier. Okay. So these are, some of the fundamental, easy to describe issues. And it's the same on the demand side, where demand can be changing, but the system is just really slow to understand that, hey, we've got a capacity constraint in a certain environment, and this demand is taking place in another region, so we've got to ship it over there, but we don't have enough trucks. Uh, People are just too slow to understand what those problems are. But if you could raise the information, let the AI actually work out what these constraints are and redirect the system based upon what's really happening on the ground, they get so much further forward in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind adding something on this. I think the other thing that um, what we're finding is that with all the oxygen that's given to AI right now, like chief supply chain officers, executives, CEOs, CFOs, they're being asked by the board, right? Like, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
I mean, Bill Gates wrote in March of this year, the age of AI has begun. And in that writing, he talked about in his lifetime, he's been blown away by technology twice. One was in 1980 when he saw the graphical user interface for the first time, which then created the whole strategy of Microsoft, right? And led to his personal wealth, basically. And the second time was when OpenAI and ChatGPT demonstrated beating an AP biology exam with ChatGPT, right? And that was something he challenged them to do. He thought it was going to take them years. They came back in a few months and showed him how it could beat this exam. And so, like, we're in the age of AI, and it's going to change the way people work. And businesses are going to distinguish themselves by how they use it. And if
Yep.
the businesses don't figure out how to use AI, they're going to be leapfrogged. They're going to be left behind, right? And so I think that's the other thing that is kind of aligned with what Trevor was saying is like that you have to get started on this now. I mean,
Right.
the next 3 to 5 years, I mean, imagine how much it's going to change
Right.
in 3 years
Yeah.
from now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Tim, Kevin, I'm gonna get your comments, but I want to, Tim gave me a little '80s reference there, with leapfrogging, a frogger, you diving, dodging all the supply
Yeah.
chain disruptions, right? But secondly, um, the cost clearly is much bigger than what most folks are even thinking about.
Yeah.
And Kevin, you and I had a conversation the other day. I want to get your comment here because it illustrates the point Tim and Trevor are making. Research shows that the companies that are truly embracing cutting edge technology, they were lapping the laggards at a 2x point. Now that has grown, research indicates, to about 5x.
Mm.
So Tim and Trevor are not, they're not blowing
Oh.
smoke here. This is what's happening.
No.
Kevin, your quick comment.
So what Trevor highlighted is the importance of change and
Mm.
accelerating change. I mean, business in the past, and I'm talking maybe 10 years ago, was more static
Mm,
than it is today,
mm,
right? And deterministic models
Mm.
work well in a static environment
mm,
because you have time to modify
Mm.
those variables.
mm,
Um, but in today's world, change is constant, it's guaranteed, and it's accelerating.
mm,
So
Mm.
deterministic models just don't work anymore. That's
mm,
why this probabilistic approach is so critical to any business in today's world. Because if you don't take into account change, like that lead time going from five
Mm.
days to 5 months,
mm,
Mm.
then you'll run up against the wall.
mm,
So
Yeah.
I think that's the key here.
mm.
The probabilistic enables change, your ability to to avoid like that Frogger, those
Mm.
supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin, I'm glad you embraced my video game analogies because I got one more for you. We can't approach global supply chain like it's the age of Pong. It is the age
Yes.
of PlayStation 5 and beyond, and we
But it
can't
is
fool ourselves.
but Scott, it is the age of Pong.
Is that? Oh, Trevor, I got it. I guess I'm challenging folks not to stick their head in the sand and pretend and buy into that. So, Trevor, excellent point there. All right. What an outstanding conversation here, Tim, Trevor, and Kevin. Really have enjoyed it. It's always invigorating to sit with people and talk shop with people that are changing how the game is played for the better. And for all the practitioners out there that are in the trenches that want to win, but sometimes they're constrained by how we've always done business. And that's not what we're talking about here. So, Tim, if folks want to lean in to doing business like it's 3023, not as if it's 2023, how can folks get started here today? What are some of those first steps you would suggest?
Sure, that's a great question, Scott. So we find that people are desperate to test applying these techniques into their business, but oftentimes don't know how to get started. And so we want to challenge people to engage with us and take what we call the AI challenge. Allow us to prove to you that we bet you that we can help you place better bets. And one way that's really easy to prove in a short period of time is using our AI models to be able to improve their demand signal. Right? If you think about the supply chain and how people are generating plans, like it starts with demand, right? And if you're making bad decisions on the demand signal, or you're making bad bets on the demand signal, it's cascading across your network or your web, Scott, as your son would say. And so we have an approach we call the AI challenge, which is an assessment where we can prove to you over the course of typically somewhere around 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the scope that we define, of how we can generate a significantly better forecast that can have measurable financial impacts on your business. That's the easiest way to get started. But don't hesitate to go to Noodle.ai to find out more information on everything that has to do with our company, or contact me or Trevor Miles on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to have a conversation there or schedule a meeting to discuss all the concepts that we've talked about with probabilistic planning, or what we're defining as regenerative supply chain planning.
I love that.
Nice.
And hey,
Nice.
that AI challenge, that's gold. I know a certain big beverage company that rolled out a challenge a while back that worked out really well for them too. So I look forward to leaning into the AI challenge. Trevor, what would you add to that, especially in terms of helping some advice around how can folks get started?
Yes. So what is interesting with AI as it's come about is it's given a new leg to IT, and you would find all of these smaller teams that have been formed inside of organizations that are focusing on AI in the IT organization. But there's a lot more to AI and making it a productive system for the entire organization than a few lines of Python code. It has to have a whole structure around it of ingesting data, learning, being able to understand the changes in terms of the learning pattern, how often you need to auto-tune it. All of that work is really, really important as well. So to any business leader, they should really think about coming to a vendor that can provide them that whole suite of capabilities. But the other thing I want to leave you with is this idea that imagine you've got a 1980, since we're in the 80s, 1989 Volkswagen Golf, and we'll even make it a diesel. And now you come along and somebody says, oh, well, we want to put an electric engine in it. So how easy would it be to now make that old Volkswagen Golf diesel into an EV? It's not easy, okay? There's a lot that has to change. And this is why Noodle being built ground up from the principles of AI and probabilistic planning, that is so much more important in all of the architecture that we deliver, rather than trying to retrofit a solution that was developed 30 years ago and now try and get it to adopt all ideas around AI and probabilistic
Yeah.
planning. So those two aspects, I think, are really important to keep in mind.
Trevor, home run between you
Yeah.
and Tim here today. Really enjoy what Noodle AI and appreciate the big impact and growing impact Noodle AI is making. Kevin, when you think about all the ground, the whole conversation we've had here today, before we make sure folks know how to connect with Tim and Trevor, although Tim's already given a sneak peek there, because Tim's always ahead of the curve. I've learned about Tim Krug. Kevin, what's
That's
one
that
of your
probabilistic thinking.
Yeah.
That's right. Kevin, what's one of your favorite takeaways from this conversation with Tim and Trevor here today?
um, I think my biggest takeaway is in the real world, nothing happened instantaneously. So you have to ride the curve. And probabilistic approach is the way to ride the curve. So if you want to work in a real world, don't be deterministic, be probabilistic.
That's right.
Yes.
That just about rhymes too, Kevin. I love it. All right.
Oh, is
So,
Noodle AI going to change that as their tagline now?
maybe, who knows? They're changing
Maybe,
a lot of good stuff. All right.
I want my
So,
royalties. I want my royalties.
well, hey, there's been a lot of what we call around here T-shirt isms here today, right, folks? Some brilliant, succinct mantras and MOs and perspectives have been dropped. Really have enjoyed it, and really it's become a hallmark of this series. So big thanks to Tim and Trevor, to you both and the Noodle AI team for partnering with us on this series. To all of our listeners out there, the smartest audience across the globe, stay tuned to the next episode in what promises to provoke more thoughts, supply chain, technology, and a whole lot more. And let us know what you think. So, Tim, really quick, you've already kind of laid it out there. You've got some good stuff out there on LinkedIn. In fact, I came across this. I want to quote you before I thank you. Quote, don't be a sucker for fixed rules. Tilt the odds in your favor by supercharging your tech stack with purpose built AI.
That's great.
Tim, end quote. I love that. So how can folks, you invite folks to connect with you at LinkedIn or check out Noodle.ai. Is that right, Tim?
That's right. You can also reach out to me via email at tim.krug, Krug, at Noodle.ai. Happy to talk about all things supply chain or the Cubs, and our chances, our probability of winning the World Series in
Okay.
2024.
Uh, Tim's got those answers. In fact, Tim, I'm getting the winning lottery ticket numbers from y'all later. But really appreciate Tim. The age of Krug continues. But Trevor, great to have you here. Great to finally meet you. I've heard so much and I came across a lot of your thought leadership over the years. Really appreciate, in particular, Trevor, to your passion when it comes to helping customers achieve frictionless, one of my favorite words, resilient and sustainable supply chains that create value and real competitive advantage. And you are doing that by the truckload. So, Trevor, how can folks connect with you?
Same thing, Trevor.Miles. I don't have to spell my last name, I don't think. Trevor.Miles at Noodle.ai is the easiest way. LinkedIn is a very good way as well. There are always lots of good conversations taking place in LinkedIn about supply chain in general, AI in specific, and Noodle in particular.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Really appreciate what all that you and Tim both have brought here today. Tim Krug, Chief Revenue Officer with Noodle AI, and Trevor Miles, a big thought leader, also with Noodle AI. Thank you both. Kevin L. Jackson, what an episode here today. Big thanks.
Powerful.
Oh, definitely. And
This
you know
was a powerful episode.
what I love about this, to your point, Kevin, is it's not theoretical. It's real.
No, it's
You're doing it
actionable.
now. So, big thanks to Kevin L. Jackson, host of our Digital Transformers with Kevin L. Jackson here, part of our Supply Chain Now family. Kevin, how can folks connect with you?
As always, Kevin at kevinljackson.com, or just go to Supply Chain Now, where you can
That's right.
see the latest shows. And on LinkedIn, I'm there talking with all of the thought leaders like Trevor and Tim. So thank you. I'll see you there.
the movers and shakers. All right, great episode here today. Big thanks once again to our collaborative partners over at Noodle.ai. We look forward to the next episode of this series, Making Better Supply Chain Bets with the Power of Probabilities. Okay, to our listeners though, the onus is on you now. Tim and Trevor and Kevin have brought it today. Take something they dropped here today in these truckloads of brilliance and put it into action. Your people will appreciate it. They want to succeed. Give them what they need to go bigger and really grab hold of the art of possible in a headlock and run with it. So with that said, on behalf of the whole Supply Chain Now team, Scott Luton challenging you to do good, give forward, and be the change. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.